So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Henderson. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is the citizens' communication. Sandy, do we have anybody that asked to speak to the board? Okay, thank you. The next item is the Chancellor's Administrative Report. Dr. Wallace.
Okay. Let me first just say thank you for your continued faith in my abilities to continue to work as Chancellor at North Central Texas College. I don't take the role lightly, and I continue to be amazed by the dedication of the folks that are sitting in front of you. They really are the champions for education, and so thank you for your continued trust in our work and our future as a college. Secondly, in your packets this evening is a report on the Board of Regents 2021-2022 institutional priorities that you established for the college last year. As you recall, this is a typical yearly activity that you ask us to investigate and or do pilot studies on certain priorities you established as a board. Last year you established several to include to continue to pursue the Achieving the Dream recommendations with an emphasis on our teaching and learning and in the classroom experience. Number two, to conduct a study regarding the reporting of classroom attendance and midterm grades as related to success and retention of students. Number three, you asked to continue the Pathways work in concert with the Texas Success Center. You ask us for creating and report and implement a Promise in the Box program for Cook, Montague counties and Graham Independent School District through the Greater Texas Foundation and RCCA grant. And you ask us to expand the English 130102 textbook program to another course. And then finally, you ask us to explore the possibility of a full program of study that utilizes open research textbooks, and or free textbooks online. As a result of a year-long work and analysis by the folks sitting in front of you this evening, because they are the ones that did this work, I have the following recommendations from them as a result of those priorities you established. The first one is to continue the work of the Teaching and Learning Center and fully develop the center over the next 2 academic years. That center is in good position. It has been approved and looked at by our Achieving the Dream coaching staff, and so I would encourage us to continue that. Number two, the recommendation is to maintain current practice, which is incentivizing attendance by using a number of pedagogical strategies to encourage regular attendance. These practices will be reinforced by department chairs, division chairs, and deans. NCTC number three, instructors are now posting midterm grades for students' review before the date to withdraw from a course. That is going to be a new incentive plan for our students. The provost office will coordinate that with enrollment management to guarantee that the process operates without any further complications for faculty, staff, and most importantly, our students. We're already doing midterm grades for dual credit students, and so the addition of that helps us. And one of the things I was excited to read in the report provided to me was doing that before the date to withdraw from a course is going to make impact on success rates overall, and students would not have multiple W's that ultimately affects their financial aid and et cetera. Number four, the recommendation is that the college continue to be engaged with the Texas Success Center Pathways Institute. We've been doing that diligently. Also, our instructional teams, when it comes to instructional course design, has been working very diligently on pathways as they are affected and work at the local level. So in other words, a pathway for certain campuses, a pathway for certain degree plans in certain areas that's been continued to be successful. Number five, the recommendation is that NCTC continue to explore textbook options that reduce the expense to students, including both OER adoptions and low-cost textbook options, as long as both do not sacrifice the academic quality. Now, I'm giving you the overall evaluation of that program, but you have in front of you a 12-page report. It gives you the full listing of all the courses that are already using OER. It gives you our work on pathways and our success metrics. So I encourage you to look at that report, but I applaud everyone that put this together. They're in the audience, and thank you each. I could start listing, but there was a lot of you involved in this work, so thank you for that. And we just really appreciate that work. So that report is provided for you in detail. Thirdly, I do feel that I should update the board on the work of the Commission on Community College Finance. and particularly the recommendations of the Texas Association of Community Colleges in conjunction with the Texas Community Teachers Association and the College Association of Texas Trustees. Our recommendations for consideration by the Commission are in the packets this evening. Actually, we're going to email those to you because they've been updated as of last week, after we had already given you your packet. They are categorized by work groups that the Commission had followed, and if you have any questions about these, we can answer those. I want to draw your attention to a couple of themes, though, that I would argue are taking place. One of the themes that we're seeing most advantageously brought forward is the idea of predictability. Much of the concern of finance, workforce education, and student support is that there is no predictable funding model for the 50 community colleges in the state. As you will see a little later in a presentation as we discuss funding for the college, you will see that there's a struggle at times to be able to long-term plan because each biennium has a different set of dollar amounts associated to it based on contact hours. So it's very hard for colleges, community colleges, to plan beyond 2 years because every 2 years the bucket of money provided by the state changes. And it's based on the contact hour of the student. We need to be very engaged in this process of work when it's presented to the legislature. Therefore, minimally, the spring will be one of the busiest times that we've ever seen legislatively working with our representatives to ensure they understand the complexities of the decisions they're going to make and specifically the impact that's going to have on North Central Texas College's funding. I do believe the Commission is going to make decisions that will change our 50-plus-year-old model in a dramatic way. We are going to see a large shift in how we are funded as public two-year institutions, and we need to be engaged in that conversation. There is no detail yet. I think, personally, we will have that detail in 2 weeks. And I think the Commission will pass its recommendations no later than September, for sure November. That will include data runs we'll need to look at as a college to say, okay, here is what this new approach to funding is going to look like and what it would do. My goal and my hope is that it will benefit all 50, but I consider that a dream. I don't believe that there is any singular model that would always support all 50 community colleges. And so we've got to be very much cognizant of what that's going to look like and work very diligently to make sure it is good for NCTC. Questions about that at all? It's more to come, a lot more to come. Next, I am very pleased to announce that the Texas Association of Community Colleges, TAC, has appointed Ray Martinez III as President and Chief Executive Officer. He will officially assume leadership of the association on the 22nd. Martinez will provide leadership to advance state policy, institutional practice, and research and support Texas community colleges. I remind you that he brings a depth of understanding. He has served as the Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs and Workforce at the Coordinating Board, and will be moving from the Coordinating Board here in just a few days to become our president at the Texas Association of Community Colleges. He has been the president of the Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas. He's been the chancellor of Western Governors University. He's held government affairs positions both at Rice and at Texas A&M International, and he previously served on the Committee of Higher Education of the Texas Senate. I'd also say that he has served on the federal level under the Clinton and under the Bush administration by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services as White House staff. He succeeds Dr. Martha Ellis, who's been serving as our temporary interim president. Finally, it is my pleasure, real pleasure, to announce that the SAC COC Board of Trustees met on June 16th, 2022, and reaffirmed the accreditation for North Central Texas College with no additional report requests from the college. And our next visit will be in 2032. And you can tell by the applause who worked on that. That is it was interesting. I had a previous board member look at me and said, I can't remember in the history of the college ever having a no report follow-up. And so I applaud everyone in this room. It was a huge, huge undertaking. We had a good visit. and I'm very proud of the work. I appreciate the work of Dr. Miller as our liaison, and leading our team in that. There are so many. I mean, seriously, every person you see in this room wrote some piece or had something to do with it. You can't begin to list that and not just say all the names in the room. From student service to library to faculty credentials were flawless. That's always a miracle. And so we appreciate their due diligence. So lots to report this evening, but I appreciate I'm open to any questions you may have about any of those items, but that's all I have this evening.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. The next item is the appointment of the Board of Regents Committee membership, and that is, we have that to hand out.
You do have that to hand out. This was
The same as last
so
year.
it's the same as last year, so we didn't put that in your packet, but it is the same as last year. One thing that was done, Madam Chairman, is there are additional proxy kind of things where you've got at least 3 members on each committee, but it doesn't require that. So those are provided for your appointment, and there's no action item to that.
No action to be taken, just wanted to make that public announcement. All right, thank you very much. The next item would be the reports to the board. Dr. Miller, the financial report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Since we did not meet in July, we have 2 months of financial statements in your packet. We have the financials for the month of June and the month of July. Not a lot of scintillating data or reporting here, but just a couple of things. I guess I'd call your attention on the July statement. The first page of the July statement is the statement of funds. I just call your attention that our funds on hand, the balance went down in the month of July, but the reason I'm reporting that is because that's not unusual. July is the slowest month of the year as far as revenue for the college. Went back and looked several years. It's just one of those historical trends that the way our operations flow, July is always a month when there's more outflow than inflow. So nothing to be concerned with on that. On the next page, on budget comparison, I just wanted to point out that if you look at the revenues or sources of funds, we're running about $8.5 million ahead of the previous year. And if you'll dig down and look at federal funds, you see federal funds are up $8.5 million for the year. So as we've been saying all year, that influx of federal funds was critical to our operations over this past year. And that also leads me to let you know that here we are in the month of August, so our fiscal year ends in 3 weeks. In 2 weeks, actually. So we're nearing the end of the fiscal year, and if you look at that statement, if you look at the comparison this year to last year, sources versus uses, I think it's evident that we're on track for another good audit report as that comes in over the coming months. And yes, we've already started that process. We are already working on closing the year and getting the new year started September 1. And then auditors will be on campus September, well, probably October, but it's about a 3-4 month process, and we'll bring a final audit to you probably in the month of December. Are there any questions about anything that you see in the financials?
Okay, thank you very much for that report. All right, the next item would be the External Affairs report from the foundation. Debbie?
It's always a pleasure for me to be able to come and share with you good news from what's happening in external affairs. And tonight I've asked my directors to be involved in the presentation, but I want to talk first about the foundation. And then, to be real honest, Lori Logan, who is our director of SBDC, her mother's seriously ill and got a phone call that she needed to head to her. And then John McLaughlin, who is our director of development, He was at work today, but talking to him on the phone, he needed not to be at work, so I told him to go home and take care of himself. So let me talk to you about the foundation, and then I'll give you a little overview on their area, and then I'll ask Donna Updegrove, Director of Grants, and Jake Laughlin to come up and talk about marketing and public relations. But from a foundation perspective, excited to say that our total assets are over $15 million, and so that was a big goal that we wanted to reach, and we have reached that this year. We've brought in over $2.2 million in donations this past year. From a perspective of emergency aid and books, we've helped over 99 students with emergency aid valued at over $36,000. We helped 52 students with books over $10,000. So truly helping students be able to stay in school and be successful in their careers. We also, Red River Promise, we are getting that kicked off. We're close to have raising or given pledges up to $1 million, so we'll continue to work that to reach our goals in making sure that Red River Promise is sustainable. We held the employee giving campaign, and excited to say that this past year, we raised over $107,000, which is the most ever through our employee giving campaign. And that's really, again, from the people in this room and the people at all of our campuses, really helping to make our students know how much we care and how much we want to make sure they're successful. Starlight Gala, many of you were able to attend that. We inducted 71 into the Honor Circle. We recognized Patsy Wilson as the Distinguished Alumni. We also recognized 4 different community service recipients for each of our campuses. So always a great evening to say thank you to so many donors. I'm going to share a few quotes from some students in our thank you notes, because I've talked a lot about numbers, but we know that what's really important is the impact that those funds are having on our students. So an example is one student shared that he was third of 9 children and that their parents were helping them, but there was no way that they could afford to pay for all of his college. His goal is to get out of school without debt. He's willing to work and do that, but he said these scholarships are truly making that possible. So it's great to hear that someone's willing to work, but these scholarships are still helping them do that. Through the emergency aid grant with the Red River or the Greater Texas Foundation, I want to share real quick that we've established a much more holistic process for our emergency aid. In the past, the foundation has gotten the applications, we awarded the funds, but thanks so much to all the different departments, the counseling, the financial aid, external community resources, we've really developed a holistic process to help those students. And so just this last week, I worked with one of the counselors, and this student was behind on every bill he was trying to finish his summer classes, was trying to enroll, and truly was at a loss. And so between the help of financial aid, the counseling advising, we got him connected to outside resources. We were able to give him some emergency funds. We got the email yesterday that says, thank you, I don't know what I would have done without y'all. And he's enrolled in class for the fall. He passed his Linux class this summer, and he's just really appreciative and excited. So knowing that what we do from a perspective of helping students with funding, but really I'm excited about helping them from a holistic perspective, not just giving them money, but let's help them stay in school, and how can we make sure that happens. So that's my real quick update on the foundation. From the SBDC, y'all know that each year the Regent office gives them goals to meet those objectives. And so Lori shared with me that their goal was to have 41 new business starts. They had 49. Unique clients served, their goal was 630. They served 674. Jobs created, they were supposed to create 225 new jobs. They created 462 new jobs. Jobs supported 2,263. They supported 2,485. And then this is the really big one, capital infusion. They were supposed to have raised and worked with companies to have $14,888,000. They had $27,685,000. So far surpassed their goals, and very proud to say they were chosen this year as the Regents SBDC of the year, and I can tell you these numbers show why they were able to do that. And you think about COVID and the impact that they've had working with those businesses, just really proud of them. As John would have told you, he's been very involved with the NCTC Alliance Outreach for Industry. So we've really focused John at the Alliance. So he's knocking on doors to companies saying, hey, what can we do to help from a training perspective, and working with them to figure out how we can best serve. And so then he works with the CTE and ACE faculty and staff to say, hey, I've got a company that needs this type of training. And Daryl's been so great to say, hey, we've got this coming at the Alliance, what kind of training he can provide. So making those connections and helping us really promote NCTC and the Alliance in that specific area. So at this time, I'd like to ask Donna Updegrove to talk to you a little bit about grants, and then Jake, if he'll come up after.
Thank you, and good evening. It's good to see you all. I know that you have in your External Affairs Annual Report, you see a listing on page 4 of the many grants that we were able to secure that were awarded to NCTC over this last year. And in comparison, in the year before, we wrote and developed and submitted 14 grants and were funded on 13 of those grants at a 93% success rate, which is phenomenal. And the good news is that we've been able to implement those grants and do great things. As you all know, NCTC sees grants as an opportunity to serve as a catalyst, to try new, innovative approaches, and then to cherry pick from those approaches the ideas that worked well so that we can embed them into our activities at NCTC and to continue some sustainability of the work that's been done through grants. Well, I'm happy to report and update some information on our successes this year. And when I say the word our successes, I'm not speaking of the grants department. I'm speaking of the folks that we have worked with, the masters of their trade, the departments that have collaborated with us to be the experts, the subject matter experts, and the ones that have been willing to do the extra work that it takes in the development phase as well as the implementation phase. So an update to these numbers, we have submitted 18 grants. We have been awarded on 13 of them to date. We still have 2 pending, and the total amount that we'd be looking at if we are fully funded for the 2 pending and the current ones is over $5.2 million in this fiscal year in grants. So what does that mean? That doesn't just mean money that comes in here to do fun things. It means money that comes in here to do hard works, to reach out to students, to develop programs, to increase equipment that allows us to provide better, up-to-date, state-of-the-art skills that our employers are saying that they need. Guys, I'm really proud of this. We've not just done things in CTE, though that has been where a lot of the money has been. We've done things across the college. We've done exciting works with our English and our math departments that have just rocked some of these grants in terms of college readiness and our success models and our completion models. Our students that traditionally would be struggling with some developmental courses are now getting the tools that can move them further forward. And they get to the credit level courses more quickly and are successful. And that leads them to continue on and sustain and persist with their particular college work. Additionally, as Dr. Wallace mentioned as one of the priorities, we had a grant in technical writing that used OER, the Open Education Resources, and has done a phenomenal job of that. Really put some innovative ideas into the program, was able to work with our marketing department to also get support in some videos. This will be published. It will be on a national repository so that others can use it. And Jared Entz's name will be on that as a representative of NCTC. So very pleased about that. We've done some very nice, strong collaborative work with some other community colleges as well as universities. I'd be remiss if I certainly didn't brag on our True grants, where we received over $2.5 million with 2 grants, 500 million. Let's go back. 500,000 of that does go to Western Texas College, who have been awesome partners for NCTC, that I think this relationship can lead to other opportunities with them. And I know that we want to explore those opportunities. I think we've set a good model. I've got so much more to say, and I'm not going to say all of it. I'm so proud of the work that NCTC as a college has done, and the model that the grants team has implemented to work with our different departments in the college. It's a winning situation all the way around. Again, it's their efforts up front that help us get the grants, but then they don't stop. The implementation process leads us to be great candidates for future funding, and there's more money coming. NCTC will be ready for that.
Thank you. Awesome.
Debbie told me 3 times to keep it brief, so Those that know me know that's challenging, but we're gonna keep it brief. So the one area that I wanted to look at, and I can answer any additional questions if we'd like to, but on page 16 of the External Affairs Report, if you have that, I wanted to talk about some numbers and update you on a few things, as well as add a couple of extra data points. When I got to NCTC, one of the first things that we changed, I came back in September of last year, we were doing a lot of our digital advertising and our digital marketing with an agency that was doing a good job, but we decided we wanted to move all of that in-house to see if we could get a little more specific and target our students a little more efficiently and see what we can make happen. So you have some of those numbers in front of you, but I'd like to update them a little bit. First, we have the Facebook impressions. In the last few months, since we made this packet, we've gotten even more aggressive. That number should actually be 3,902,443. Just to add a little additional context, we are also tracking the clicks on these ads. Impressions are great, but are they following it? That data set had 16,596 clicks to our website, primarily to our apply page. On our Google search advertising, instead of the 900,000 figure, we did 1,521,000 with 65,160 clicks, and because we're also able to track it as well, we had 2,179 phone calls to the school from potential students looking for more information. Additionally, I wanted to way update the email marketing number. We did 3,371,666 emails with over 70,000 link clicks. We're waiting on the final totals on those. So total impressions from those digital assets or altogether was 8,959,827 with over 150,000 clicks. Now, as a comparison to last year, just to see did it work or did it not, or were we able to do better than the agency, last year on Facebook impressions, they did 724,821. Again, we did 3,902,443, and we spent half what we did last year. We were able to take that other half and double our number of billboards across our service areas as well. So it's been really, really fun, and been a pleasure to get to pull some of these data points and see how things have been going. Happy to elaborate on any other areas if you'd like, but that's the one that I've just been most proud of and wanted to brag on. And then just very last thing, I wanted to let everybody know, set your calendars for August 20th for the North Texas Fair and Rodeo. That will be North Central Texas College Night at Denton's largest event on their busiest night. So really, really excited about that, and we'd love to see y'all out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, very good, great reports. Exciting information. All right, the next item would be the consideration for approval of the consent agenda items. There are two represented. Do either one of those need to be independently discussed? Anyone need to? No? Okay. If not, I'd accept a motion to approve those as presented. We have a motion by Mr. Hand. Do we have a second? Second by Erica. Thank you. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Under the next item, which is discussion and possible action items, the first item is the consideration and action on the NCTC budget. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The budget that you have in front of you this evening has changed very little since our workshop back in June. As presented here, the annual budget will increase by approximately $500,000. I believe your budget is a separate attachment there on your desk. Thank you. There's an increase of about $500,000 over last year's budget, and as it is right now, there's about an $8,000 surplus of revenue over expenditures. But I think the most noteworthy part of this budget is the concerted effort that's been taken to support all the faculty and staff here at NCTC. Because after 2.5 years of COVID, with spiking gas prices, with the highest inflation we've seen in decades, with all of these economic uncertainties, this budget includes a 5% increase in compensation for all full-time employees, along with a $2 per hour increase in most of our part-time wages. Now, that 5% full-time raise alone accounts for a little over $1 million worth of expenses. So if it weren't for that salary increase, there would be a reduction in the overall budget of at least $500,000. So I want you to realize that when you see a budget that's gone up by $500,000, well over $1 million of that is in order to incorporate these raises into the budget. And also, I would point out that the budget is just over 60, it's between 61 and $62 million, and that makes 3 years in a row our budget has stayed right in that $60–61 million range, after it had reached a high of $67 million in fiscal year 2020. So we're still considerably less, over 10% less than where we were 3 years ago. The administration recommends approval of the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2023, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Madam Chairman, just to clarify a couple of things. The 5% is a customary. We used to do 5% of midpoints in the past. This is actually a 5% raise of current salary. If you remember when we adopted the compensation study, we weren't really able to work on longevity. Those that had been here over a period of many years, we were able to work on the actual compensation itself. What this is doing is it's going to show those that have been committed to the college over a period of several years, it gives them a raise of their actual salary, which is more beneficial to, a lot of times, to our longer serving employees. And so this is kind of our attempt at that, but it's a very healthy raise for everyone at 5%. I also believe Dr. Miller included in the budget is an adjunct raise, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Of, I think it gets us to $2,010 for a 3-hour course.
I believe 650 to
670,
per,
yes. And what we think is very healthy there is our chairs can attest and our deans. It's a challenge to be competitive with our other regional institutions, and I'm very proud to say there's also in the budget the ability to raise that adjunct salary level, again, showing our appreciation for their work. And I think those are some highlights that are important as well.
Okay. No. Do we have any additional questions related to the budget? If not, then I would accept a motion for approval. Motion by Mr. Henderson. Do we have a second? Second by Dylan Ott. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. The next item would be the consideration of approving the 2022-2023 salary schedule.
Good evening. We kind of already covered it, so that groundwork is done. For the next year, we are not recommending an increase for those entry folks just joining us to the faculty, our ACE program, or our full-time staff positions. But as you heard, we are requesting the increase for adjuncts to $6.70 an hour for credit load, and also for our part-time people, a $2 increase across the board. We feel that'll help us be more competitive with other businesses out there.
Okay, and all those numbers are already incorporated into the budget, so we're, okay. All right, very good. So we'll need to approve the change to the salary schedule. Do I have a motion? We have a motion by Erica. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Hand. Do we have additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. The next item is to consideration of approving the Associates of Applied Science in Construction Management. Mr. Smith? Did I skip something? Did I? Oh, I did. I'll come back and get it next.
I skipped the text.
Yeah, sorry. I'll get it next. Go ahead. No, go right ahead, and we'll come right back to it. Whoops.
I was going to run while I had So tonight I'm here to academic administration request the approval of the new plumbing level 1 certificate to be offered beginning spring 2023. The construction management level 1 certificate and construction management associate of applied science degree to be offered in fall of 2023. And I'll go over the reasons that we're kind of splitting it up like that. I believe you have this information in your packets, but just some points to consider with the new construction management and plumbing. The plumbing basic certificate is a 15-hour certificate. That's the one that's going to be spring of 2023, and we're doing that in conjunction with the second True Grant. That's kind of the timing of that one instead of going all the way till fall of 2023. The part of the constraints of the grants or requirement of the grant is to have that started in spring. There's also a construction management level 1, a 30-hour certificate program. That one's going to be in fall of 2023. And the Associate of Applied Sciences also fall of 2023. Just some numbers. The True Grant 2 is an award of $530,000. Most of that will go for the plumbing lab build out and computer classroom and some additional items. The projected growth of plumbers, if anybody's tried to get a plumber to come to your house or anything, you know that this number seems kind of low. But right now it's projected to be a 16.6% growth in the next 10 years. Of that number, it probably will be higher because 11% roughly is greater than 65 years in the workforce now. So that number probably will go up even more. Construction management, that one's kind of unpredictable, especially with the change in the economy, but right now the projected growth on that one is 17.3%. The plumber's salary is, well, again, if you've had somebody come out to your house or business, you know that it's probably a lot more than this. But the starting salary is $23.75 an hour, or a yearly salary of $49,000. For construction management, the entry level is $85,000. Now that was skewed a little bit by education level, but for an associate and bachelor's, they kind of lumped them together in that one. So that one might trend a little bit lower for our graduates, but not by a whole lot. One of the interesting things is the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. They selected the 5 courses that we're using as the plumbing certificate, the basic level, and in conjunction with our education board, they picked those 5 classes that will lead into a tradesman plumber licensing. So they'll have the education point once they graduate from our program, and at that point they just need to get their hours and they would be eligible to sit for that examination. Another interesting fact is 10.4% of our 8th grade career fair students asked about a plumbing program, which is bizarre to me, but that was out of 500 plus students, 10.4% actually asked about that program. The advisory boards for both HVAC and plumbing that was newly formed, both of them highly encourage that we do a plumbing program. Any questions? I think I got everything. We're going to start the plumbing program here in Gainesville, but it'll also be expanded to Alliance. Both. It'll be both. We, hopefully tomorrow we should be getting a temporary occupancy.
Very good. Plan to offer classes?
We have classes starting
scheduled.
next week.
Yeah.
They're scheduled, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. All right.
Daryl has been extremely involved in that process, and so we applaud his work and Dean Huffman and everyone working that. I'm excited about this degree from a state perspective because there's a lot of conversation around skilled workforce. And I think this is a very good approach for us in that there is some flexibility to the degree, and I'm just excited to see us quantifying a track for students that are interested in these kind of skill sets. I think it's brilliant, yeah.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve the applied science in construction management. Okay, we have a motion. Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Henderson. Do we have a second? Second by Erica. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go back. Consider the, of proposing an ad valorem tax rate for the 2022-2023 budget.
So I am going to start this conversation, and I would like to start with a brief presentation. We typically limit our presentations around this, but with the work of the Commission on Community College Finance and with the conversations right now about how values have increased and appraisals have increased, this has become a very hot topic in community colleges. And so I just kind of wanted to review, not only with our board, but even those that may be watching or in the audience, how we're funded once again. And that is a three-tiered system of state appropriations as we sit today. Now, this is all contingent on the work of the commission, but, and I'll be drawing your attention to the PowerPoint. Even numbered years, there's no changes, but then on odd numbered years, known as the end of a legislative session, we determine and we are then awarded our appropriations based on what they decide they're going to fund and or not fund. And that's based on contact hour distribution. I remind you that certain programs pay higher reimbursement rates than others. For example, a contact hour distribution rate for nursing for our RN program is well higher appropriated than other history or government or speech class, for example. And so that's very difficult because when you do what you did this evening during those kinds of years, you may not know exactly what your appropriations are going to be when you approve a yearly budget. And that's part of the concern we have. The commission says there's no predictability to what those dollars may or may not be. Then you have your local property tax, which is what your discussion is this evening, and that is the effective tax rate is now referred to. You know, they've changed all the titles. Dr. Miller will get into that in a moment. But I remind you that there is now no new rate. There's voter approval rates. We were still exempted in the last session when many of our colleagues at the county level and ISDs were capped at a 3. We were still exempted from that and have the ability to go up to what really is 7.99%. And so I remind you that keeps us under that rate. We don't often know what final evaluations are till the end of July. And then you've got your other tier, which is tuition and fees, which honestly we set usually in the spring for the following year, but a lot of colleges are now adapting new tuition rates even in their spring. So they will adopt a fall rate, and then they'll increase it again in the spring. We have some colleges in the state that don't adopt a fall rate. They adopt only a spring increase. And so that's very much different. And then we see that tuition rate that's usually published by TAC just as a data collection. So what I wanted to do this evening, give you some examples. These examples are how our colleges set up in those three areas. I would argue that Temple College is probably one of the most diversified evenly that there exists in the state. And I do remind you our CFO came from that institution. But if you look at that, we're giving him credit for it, whether it was true or not. But if you look at that, any individual area that is affected negatively allows you to be responsive to it. In other words, if you have a little dip in local taxes, you can respond by the two other pots. If tuition and fees happens to be down a bit, you can respond to the two others. You know, there's even. And I'll get to a visual of this in just a moment. Now, College of the Mainland and Collin College are examples of large tax base institutions. So 56% of the budget, and these are, I used 2-year-old data for this almost by now. So, I mean, this is even probably higher. But 56% of Collin's budget is taxes. And so what they're able to do as a result of that is they keep their tuition and fees really low because that is not necessary for their success in budgeting. The two in front of you are the two lowest tax rates in the state of Texas. NCTC, I think we now rank third lowest because I think Northeast is in the middle now and they're the youngest college in the state. Northeast has only been existent maybe 30 years, 25 years. Glenn and NCTC are the lowest, and that's where we are with those. So tuition fee heavy. So when enrollment is affected by whatever, it affects how you budget in a dramatic way because the other two pots are less monies to fall back upon. Now, I'm a visual person, and so I think of it, we've often heard this as the three-legged stool of funding. So if you look at Temple, their stool is quite even, right? Any one of those could be shortened a bit, and maybe you can still sit on that stool. If you look at College of the Mainland, they're heavily locally taxed. An odd stool, mind you, still. You would argue that this is why they have a lower tuition rate, this is why they're able to not have to worry about generating that revenue to make budget, and then their state appropriations. If you look at North Central, we do have a fallen stool. The majority of our funding is contingent on whether or not a student takes classes, enrollment. And I'm going to say this to the board just in all transparency. We've been talking as staff. The community college industry last year in the state of Texas lost 100,000 students, walked out. The state graduation to higher ed, so in other words, the state number of students, a percentage of high school students that automatically went to college or TSTC or a university, only 46% of our high school graduates chose to attend higher ed last year. So we lost 54%. Why is that important? As you all have this discussion, and this is your discussion to have, Madam Chairman, I thought it important to see where we are, because if tuition and fees has reduction, it does affect NCTC, and I'm going to argue that those 100,000 students are not coming back anytime soon to higher ed. And I'm also going to argue that because of that, most colleges today, including NCTC, are having to say the days of large enrollment may be over for the next at least 5 years. We need to rethink, and we are as a staff, rethinking the strategy of not a 10,000 person college, but an 8,000 person student college that focuses our attention more on retention and completion than body count. And I think that's important because then it affects state appropriations more effectively. You get funded for those completions. It will help your budget, but we have got to refocus our attention away from this notion that, oh, let's get 10,000 students, let's get 10,000 students. That's great, but we've always said we will be better positioned if we're serving 8,000 and they're all full-time, or they're all matriculating successfully. That's the right thing to do. But I thought that this particular presentation is a very enlightening. I do want to show you one other document, if you would allow me to, and that is this. When you look at the valuations of North Central Texas College and where we are, but then you look at the M&O rate compared to all 50 colleges, this is where we sit. There are several communities, that serve far less population than Cook County that are paying much higher tax rates. The average state rate is 15 cents, and that's just M&O. I give you an example. For example, Western Texas College is in, you heard that we partnered with them. If you look at Western Texas and you look at the scheme of their tax rate, they're in Snyder. Anybody ever been to Snyder? Snyder is a small community in Scurry County, I want to say. They pay a 34-cent tax to have that college. I am providing data. I'm not making any kind of, you're going to hear the administration's recommendation that we for sure go up to what would be the no new tax rate. But I feel like the board needs to have this data for whatever conversation you may or may not want to have. But these are smaller. Ranger College only. Ranger only has Ranger ISD. They don't even have all of Eastland County, and they pay 33 cents in the city of Ranger. So our tax rate has been and continues to be a very conservative rate. But I wanted you to see that in a market that is growing in competition, where the college sits to the 50.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace. As we move forward with this particular agenda item, I just want to make sure everyone's aware that when it comes to proposing an ad valorem tax rate, the state has very strict standards that we as the taxing entity have to follow. Included in your packet is a 9-page tax rate calculation worksheet. The numbers were filled out by the appraisal district, and I have personally verified them. They appear to be accurate. And this worksheet is going to be posted on our website leading up to next month's actual vote on approval of a tax rate. The calculations included there are complex, they're confusing, but they do represent a good faith effort on the part of the state to protect property owners from runaway tax bills. Also in your board materials, you'll find that the administration is recommending a combined tax rate of 0.0851 cents per $100 valuation. According to Texas law, this rate falls between the no new tax rate, which used to be effective, and the voter approval rate, which used to be the rollback rate. So since we are above the no new tax rate, if approved, we're going to have posting requirements to meet and hold a public hearing prior to next month's board meeting. Now, this proposed rate of 0.0851 cents is 7.9% greater than the no new tax rate. And according to state reporting requirements, that would cost the owner of a $100,000 property in Cook County approximately $8 more than the no new tax rate. Now, to be precise, the 0.0851 is made up of two components, an M&O rate of 0.0596 and an INS rate of 0.0209. I also want to point out that there's something very interesting going on this year in setting this rate. It's not part of the mandatory state reporting, but I want to acknowledge that it's something in my 15 years as a CFO I've never seen before. We've had all this publicity over the past few months about property appraisals going through the roof. And I can personally attest to that fact, as for my personal residence, the appraised value went up 36% this year. Now, the actual tax that a homeowner like myself is going to pay is actually a very simple calculation. It's made up of two things. It's the taxable value times the tax rate. Well, the tax rate that we are proposing of 0.0851 is actually 10.3% less than this current year's rate. The rate's currently at 0.0949. So we're going down just almost a full cent, about a 10.5% drop. Now, for personal homesteads like mine, taxable values are capped and cannot go up more than 10% in a given year. Appraised value went up 36%, but the taxable value on my house has gone up right at 10%. So I've got two components. The rate has gone down 10.3%. My value's gone up 10%. I've calculated that at this new tax rate, Van Miller's tax bill next year from NCTC will be $4 less than it is this year. As I said, I've never seen it in 15 years, but it's the valuations, the caps, All these things that come into play. Now, if you own rental property, if you own something that is not a homestead, don't think your taxes are going down. I'm not trying to say that, please. But I'm just saying the homeowner who has a homestead, all other things considered, this new tax rate, there are a lot of people in the county whose tax bills from NCTC will go down because of the rate that's being set. Just wanted to point that out to everyone. It is quite unusual. But I just want to remind you that what we're doing tonight, what we're asking of you tonight, is to propose the new tax rate. You're not voting on it. You're not approving it. The way we have to do this now, we have to have a meeting where the board proposes a tax rate. It has to be a roll call vote, because part of our posting requirements are to show what rate the board is proposing, which board members voted for it, which members voted against it, who was absent, who abstained. That's part of our posting requirement, and it will be on the website over this next month. And then we'll have a public hearing prior to the September board meeting where we're open for public comment. And then we've met the posting, the public hearing requirements. Then at the September meeting, we can actually vote to approve the ad valorem tax rate for the new year. It's on the website.
It's on the website. Dr. Miller, would you repeat at the rate we are recommending as administration, the M&O rate by itself one more time, please?
The M&O, I knew you were going to, the M&O rate is 0.0596.
And a branch maintenance tax rate is what?
It's capped at 0.05 cents.
So the M&O rate for the college is nearing the level of a
Almost.
branch maintenance tax.
If next year it were to go down the same amount it went down this year, it would be below a maintenance
And we
tax
have
rate.
with us Gordon, our representative from Graham this evening, and I know that they're doing their best to try to reach that 5 cent, but they are under the same rules as an ISD board as we are about how they can increase. And they're doing their due diligence, but it may be very difficult for them to maintain the 5 cent under those new regulations. That's a challenge. I just wanted to make that connection, that it's interesting that we're actually getting our in-district rate close to a branch maintenance rate.
So the administration ask you to propose a tax rate of 0.0851 per $100 value.
Here is what the board can do, Madam Chairman. You can make a motion to do that. You can make a motion to do a higher rate. You can make a motion to go past and do past the voter approval rates. It just would mean a vote. I mean, those are things that you have multiple choices. You can make that decision this evening. You could say, okay, for example, if you wanted to go above what we're recommending and you said we want to consider keeping the same rate we have today, I'm just making a scenario up. You could call for that, hear public comment, and then not vote to do that at the actual September meeting. I mean, it's not necessarily that you have to then ultimately, because that's part of the public comment process. Then if you did do that and you lost that election for any reason, you can still then return to what we've recommended this evening. So I'm just giving you all the different legal options there are for a board.
Yeah.
Use the tax rate of 0.0851.
wrapped up into how much. Average amount of tax. Of the dollars that I invest. And I think we at NCTC absolutely are good stewards, and I think we continue to provide information to the public and through subcommittees, et cetera, of the good work that we do here. We are going to be faced with some huge challenges moving forward with where we sit today when the stool looks as lopsided as it is. So I think this board really has some soul searching to do, and we need the community to support this institution in the direction, because we do put out a really good product. It affects so many people in our community. And the communities that are in our entire service district, and as far as that goes, where we have our campuses. So while I'm personally supportive of that, of the decision, I wish we would strongly consider more, because I think we need it. And I think we could do so much more if we had more funding. And I worry about how this stool is going to change with some of the comments that Dr. Wallace made earlier about the commission and the study, and we really don't know what that's going to look like just yet. So those are my discussions.
Left the rate at 0.49, the increase in revenue to the college would be how much?
$1,072,000.
Yeah,
So
it's
roughly double.
Correct.
What we're going to get.
correct.
Again, reiterating what Carla had to say, being the third lowest rate in the state, and with one of the lowest tax contributions to an educational facility in the state, with a mid-sized student population, we are underfunding via taxes significantly. I know that this is going to create some pushback and people are going to rise up, but the truth is our job is to provide affordable, quality education. You can't do that without money. And the state is not providing adequate funding for us to do that. That's why everybody has to tax. So I am all in favor of the minimum of 0.85. I'm happy to entertain further discussion about leaving it at 0.949.
This is just proposed. And the other thing, too, I wanted to comment on what you just said about we can't go up on tuition and fees anymore. I mean, the stool is crazy, and we're going to price ourselves out of being affordable against the competitors that we have that offer the same services we do. We are right at that level, which we just cannot continue to just go up and ask the students to pay more. I mean, people in the community can make an argument that those individuals are the ones that are benefiting from this college, but they really don't realize how far-reaching the college impact is on the economy in our entire taxing district and beyond, if that's their one specific way to look at it.
Well, I can tell you the list of institutions that Dr. Wallace showed on property tax. I'm very familiar with the one that's the absolute lowest, and that's Blinn College. And it can work at Blinn because as long as their tuition is somewhat underneath Texas A&M, they're going to have those students.
Sure.
Yes, I can. I was just about to ask if you want.
Northeast Texas, over in Mount Pleasant. It's a brand
Brand-new college.
Essentially a new college, about 25 years old, and they tax, it is very much a rural college. Their tax covers 3 counties of Northeast Texas. And there are there's some valuable industry there, at least it used to be valuable industry. I don't know, things have changed in recent years, but.
So Northeast Texas with their current rate, although it's the now second lowest because of valuations, they're bringing in about 5.8 million because they have a higher INS rate. Okay, because they had to build an infrastructure that didn't exist. They're a new college in the scheme of life. This report in front of you, everything below the blue line are colleges that have a less property valuation than NCTC. And so if you take the average of their combined rate, for example, and say, okay, property's less valued than Cook County, you will see that they pay on average 20 cents, 20.207 is the average combined rate for colleges that have less valuation than North Central Texas College. That's just another way to carve out the pie to look at that data. And then what you were referring to, Mr. Grimes, is this particular list where we are, yeah.
.0851, yes. We made the revenue projections based upon that for the budget that was presented.
And Madam Chair, with your permission, and you can tell us when to stop talking. We need to understand, too, those monies stay in Cook County. I mean, we have to reemphasize those monies stay in Cook County. For example, if you had some form of tax, and the ones in Graham, the 5 cents in Graham stays in Graham. Graham is very much now, you know, for years we worked diligently to, that's increased over the years. Now it's very independent. Graham is a very independently operating. Their tax values now cover their operational expense. Thank you for that. I mean, that's important. If we ever did past branch maintenance in other school districts or in Denton County, for example, 5 cent branch maintenance tax in Denton County generates somewhere between $58 and $60 million a year, 5 cents. That would all have to stay in Denton County. Right now, there's flexibility when tuition and fees are generated outside of taxing district to be able to fund staff, positions, things across the whole district. So I just remind people, because I think there's a lot of confusion in our service area versus our tax, because we use those terms intermediate. I mean, we confuse them. In other words, you'll say in district to us means our college district, everybody's in our district. That's not what we mean when we say in district from a taxing perspective. In district's Cook County only from the tax code, but we talk about the college district. Well, that's our service area technically. So there's a lot of narrative out there. I argue that a lot of Denton County folks think they pay taxes. And because they pay an ISD tax, and I'm like, that's not us. We'll take a part of that if you'd like to offer it. And we can reduce that tuition. I totally agree with you, Madam Chairman. We are going to price ourselves out of the market in Denton County if we don't try to solve that issue. This will not solve that issue. This is what's going to provide what we need to do the work and the program and the classes and the schedules and the things we need for Cook County, for Gainesville campus. It will not solve Denton yet as far as that tuition rate, but that's part of what we work on every day.
And if you look at the chart that's on the screen right now, and Dr. Wallace, if you'd kind of get a few more colleges showing. Look, we get 4.6 million. Look at what we are competing with.
Yeah.
Are you talking regionally, sir?
Anywhere you want to look. There are very few that get less than we do, and we're talking 50, 100, $200 million worth of support. Their ability to compete and provide programs and do things is exponentially larger than we are based on simple tax revenue. For us to ask $4.5 million and compete with colleges that get 50, 100, $200 million is an awfully difficult challenge. So any pushback we get, I'd be happy to visit with whoever it is wants to come in and talk about it and put those numbers on the board.
Well, an example, too, of a high tax rate with very little revenue, and as Dr. Miller pointed out, this was I'm very familiar with this institution. And we only had, when I was there, they only have Cisco Independent School District. They don't have all of Eastland County. They have a 25 cent rate now but they only generate 1.4 million, but it takes 25 cents to generate that. We're actually competing for market value, and I hate to use that term. I hate that we are in a land of using in higher education the term competitive, but when a student's looking at a Collin, for example, $129 million in revenue from their tax base, one of the lowest out-of-district tuition rates in the state, and they're doing a comparative to say, okay, I'm doing an online course, and I'm either going to pay out-of-district at a higher level NCTC or higher at Collin that's much lower than that. All the great work we do, which I'd argue we'll put our services up against Collin any day, the student often right now especially is just looking at the bottom dollar. And that's where it gets real tight.
Other comments? Or
Yeah, I think this year is a tough year to be asking for good report. I think if our budget allows, I think we can do something based on something the state may or may not do. I think there's a lot of people in our service area that are, there's been all kinds of increases everywhere. I think it's awfully tough for me to say, hey, we're going to meet our budget and we still want more money. And while we don't know what the state's going to do, I don't think this is a good year to be asking for more.
And our budget, which is essentially balanced, included the .08, whatever it is, the 500,000.
Yes.
So we balance based on that.
And I think our budget is, I don't think we're doing anything crazy on the budget.
no.
I think we're
I mean, when you look at the increases, I mean, you're seeing over 10% inflation in so many areas, and what we're doing with the wages, I think, is fair, and I think that's all. We're not doing anything crazy or outside the box.
Yeah.
I don't believe, and so I think that's a fair. I think something like what's proposed is more fair to the citizens of Cook County right now.
Yeah, we have a motion for that and a second for it as of right now, and I agree with you. I just wanted to bring the points up that we're approaching some really shark-infested waters, and we need to be prepared for that as we move into
Carl,
the
what's
next
the,
couple of
or
years.
Dr. Wallace, what is the opportunity if we're gonna leave money on the table that the state's gonna give based on an average type of a situation?
So-
What are the opportunities to go back and get our base up?
I mean, there are so many I have visited with almost every commissioner. I've served on a think tank with one of the commissioners of the Commission on Community College Finance that had his own think tank that was through Commit Texas. Many of us are familiar with Commit. I served on those, and I kept pushing this notion that there's a broken system with taxation in community colleges across the state. So for example, and I need to clarify, but I think I'm right here, 90% of the state doesn't pay a community college tax. And so what that actually defines is your success and your access to education at a fair price is contingent on your zip code. That's a problem. If we say that community college mission in the state is to serve the workforce needs and the needs of students to get quality education at a lower price, we're not doing that well as a state. But all sorts of things have been thrown out of Austin and out of the commission. One of those was, do we end or do we stop the conversation of core funding? I remind you that we get core funding, which is not as big a bucket for NCTC as it is, for example, for a Ranger College. I chaired the Joint Formula Advisory Committee for the state this year. We're asking in that, which has so far been adopted by the coordinating board, but not by the legislature yet. We ask that $2 million go to each institution rather than the 1.5 and change or 1.3 we've done in the past, because we've got to figure out how do we undergird. But one conversation I heard, on all these are commission, kind of rumored, or what if we, is how do we start to do that, but we undergird these institutions with small tax bases with incentives from the state, But I heard one commissioner say, but I don't think we should do that if a college isn't at the state average level. They're not doing their due diligence as a taxing entity if they're not at the 15 cent. But then, I'll be honest with you, I don't think taxation is going to be a conversation at all with the commission. I don't think it's a good period of time to discuss it. I think they're going to focus on success points and what that means in the future, which is another way of saying I think they're going to focus on outcomes. I think they're going to focus on socioeconomically and academically disadvantaged students and how much more expense it is to work with those students to make sure they're prepared. I think they're going to focus on something around dual credit. I don't know what that'll look like, where every student has big availabilities of dual credit. And
if they did focus on, hey, you have to have 15 cents, is that something we could come back and revisit?
no, not till next tax year. But
didn't
arguably, it could take them a year to get legislative done anyway. I mean, there's delays in everything we do.
But what was our tax rate, Dr. Miller, when we passed the rate for the Health Science Center?
It was over 12, but I think in the presentation,
We
it
presented
was
as 14.
projected to go up to 14. And
So
it was
we've been at
approved.
14 before. It's just that as valuations have gone up, we've stayed at that no new tax rate, So it's just driven it down based on evaluation change. So
I think the highest that the college has ever had. We saw, it was, the conversation was it could be, I think, as much as 14 when they passed it. I think the highest we've ever had is 12.
12 and a half.
12 and a half.
something like that, 13, yeah. So,
but they were new, so obviously they had a high rate in one area due to that. So it shows planning and going out for bond elections and long-term planning, because we haven't raised it in a number of years.
okay, other discussion at this point, because we do have a motion and a second for the rate as proposed by administration, which would be our proposal that we would then vote on at our September board meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and one final thought from the administration. Our point in all of this conversation is knowledge.
Right.
Is that not only you as board members be very comfortable with understanding what this is, what this means, what other colleges are doing, but also that our community understand that if we need to. We're always welcome to sit down with any community membership or any groups and say, I can show you the same data, I can speak to that data and what it does for us. So that's our purpose this evening, is to provide you with a knowledge base where you feel like you're making a decision that's data informed.
Thank you. All right. Very good. So we'll need to call the name and ask you to vote by name. Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Mr. Grime?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Metzler, aye. Mr. Henderson? Sullivan? Okay. So we have motion passed unanimously for the proposed rate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
So we will work on a calendar for public hearing and get with the board on that.
Okay. All right, the next item would be the consideration of approving the bid for the Lion Gym sound system.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Dr. Wallace, members of the board. We wanted to bring before you this bid tonight. As some of you have probably attended events in the our Lions Gym. We have graduations there, we have athletic events, we have donor scholar breakfast, and you may have noticed that the acoustics and sound left something to be desired there. Fortunately, we've completed the acoustics part of the project this past spring, but we're bringing before you tonight a consideration of approval of a bid for the remaining project, the sound part of it. So there were 3 bids submitted, and we're recommending the low bid. All 3 bids were reviewed. They do meet the specifications for what was required. And so the administration recommends the approval of Evolve Audiovisual LLC as vendor for the Lions Gym sound system. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
We need a motion to approve that recommendation. Mr. Grime made the motion. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Sullivan. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Motion carried. All right, the next item would be the discussion regarding the remote and flex work procedure. Dr. Wallace.
So this is just a discussion. There actually be no request for action on the board's part. It is a general discussion to say we are continuing to run into questions of remote work and flex scheduling. Our colleagues across the state, I polled. I have reported that poll back to the full body of the Texas Association of Community Colleges. One of the things I ask is, are you currently, you have a program for remote work, you're considering a program for remote work, and the response rate, which I always think is pretty good, was 70% response rate, which is statistically significant. And the response rate was that 70% of those polled are in the process of either creating a work-from-home policy, a flex schedule, or already have one in place. I have a procedure I can hand the board. It is not in your policy manual because it is not a policy. You will not adopt this in the sense. It is only for you to have it as a review if you want to. We have done a good job of fully vetting this out. Right now, we have focused our work from home on one department that is very much a department that works, I hate to say, but is detail-oriented, and they have to work really in front of computers, and even if they were physically on a campus, they are in an office that whole time working. But we know that we're at a crossroads. Either we have to decide that this is something the board is okay with us to move forward with from a procedural standpoint, and we need to look then at other positions that can be a part of this plan, or we have to sort of say, okay, this isn't something the board thinks that we need to move forward with, and then we figure out a mechanism to transition out of it. We are losing, I would argue, employees to this on occasion, but it's just a weird environment for employment right now. But if we do expand, if the board says, Dr. Wallace, we do think you should move forward with this, I'm going to be honest that it's going to take us till December, in my opinion, minimally, to just identify what positions that would work for, because we are instigating a new payroll system, if you remember, that you adopted. I think that needs to be in place first, because that will also enable us to geofence for time cards, et cetera, even by home location in the future. We've been able to figure that out, but it will probably take us that long to go through job descriptions again and say, yes, this particular position would warrant a work from home. Flex scheduling is a different conversation that we can have, but when you adopted this evening the policy shift, you adopted a change to leave. You eliminated personal leave, and you put that amount in vacation and in sick leave. No one lost hours, but you eliminated this notion of personal leave. There's even conversations of how that's worked in the past instead of flex. So in other words, someone says, I need to be home for a plumbing thing, but I have my laptop at home, and while I'm waiting that hour or two, I have the ability to do my job for an hour or two. We don't want to get in that kind of weeds with these policies, because that is a management decision. That is a management to say, yes, I trust that my person, I can see they're doing that work at home. But if the board doesn't have an affinity and does not want us to pursue remote work, if you have a philosophical disagreement with that, we've got to know that, or vice versa, if you want us to move forward, we also need to know that. So this is just a discussion, Madam Chair. One of the things I would point out is there is a requirement for temporarily being on a campus and getting to know the college prior to being allowed to go. So it's not an automatic, you're hired and 10 minutes later you get to go online. There is a new employee period of time in which we want you to be on campus, learning people's names, getting to know the culture of the college. So that's in there. I also say there are certain eligible positions. At this point, we don't foresee a very easy ability ability for certain higher level positions to do this because of the numbers of individuals they manage that are physically on campus. Especially the permanent remote work is 100% versus 2 days or versus 1 day. We've got a lot of homework to do if we do proceed, but we need some direction.
Especially as we start talking about completion being a piece of what we're doing here, I think any positions that are outwardly facing, I would strongly think through those. I don't think I'm as pro any outwardly or student facing, especially student facing positions because of the student experience. I don't think it's as good remotely. Personally, all the studies I've read talk about the retention rates and those kinds of things being kind of a detriment with some of the remote items. So anything that's not already remote, I would say that would be a bad thing, or anything that's also just outwardly facing with our students in any kind of way would be something I would strongly recommend against. I do think some of the, I'll call them more task-oriented and things that you can really measure productivity from home and those kinds of things. We've seen big successes in industry with many of those things, especially like you said, the ones where the fewer distractions, the better. I don't have a problem personally with those kinds of activities. But I do think it would be prudent to look at either making sure you can track productivity and or some kind of a software that it's easy to be able to prove up that for any of your managers that don't like the work from home thought process, that they could easily go, they could see some data and go, yeah, that makes sense, they're working, I don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Hey, pretty much agree with what you're saying. I know there are certain jobs that are particularly effective if you are at home. My son runs a big data analytics operation, and I can promise you the people that work for him all go like this today, and they do fine. And you can tell absolutely whether or not they're producing. There's no question that you can judge whether they're working, the quality of their work, whether or not they're getting the job done. However, that said, there are an awful lot of jobs at this school and other companies that don't lend themselves successfully to that kind of environment. What I'm going to say is, it's not my position to tell the chancellor of the school which jobs they are. So, having been extremely pleased with Dr. Wallace's performance over the past few years, I would be very happy to lay this as a doorstep and say we would support your decisions on how you would like to apply remote work practices and job definitions.
Totally agree.
I would guarantee one thing: we will never sacrifice service, ever. I mean, that is not anyone's intent. We will never sacrifice the student experience. And so rest assured, if it did that, we would not entertain any of that, because our mission is, number one, to provide what the student needs. It's been interesting over the last year or two with COVID to see what the students need and how they're resourcing things. I've been amazed at our telemedicine kind of products that we've used. I've been amused at Timely MD and counseling sessions, and students feeling more comfortable with counselors virtually than they are face-to-face. That's the data that we can provide. That's the data we can look at. And so, no, I appreciate that. We're open for that kind of comment. This is good.
Yeah, I definitely think we're supportive, it sounds like, from the comments that were made.
Well, and what I do have to then state is this. There may be you cannot say then that there aren't certain departments, because of the nature of the positions, that may then not be able to have work from home, and we're going to have to be okay with that. And that's tough, but that'll be an administrative call to say there are certain things that we just don't believe are appropriate. And for example, can you be I use this example because it's really easy, and Jack's here. Maintenance cannot be. I'm so sorry, Jack. You cannot have maintenance, housekeeping, and those kind of things is virtual employees. They know that, and they understand that, and they're okay with that, because Jack doesn't really care for virtual meetings even. And so that kind of thing has to then be accepted, where we know that we've really looked, and then the college has to accept that to say, listen, we're trusting that we've looked at it the appropriate way, and we know that that date is correct. Otherwise, it doesn't work at all. And so oftentimes, I know other colleges have faced the, well, that's not fair conversation. We have to then always revert back to what's best for the student rather than maybe what we feel is good. And so I appreciate that. Any others?
No, it's good. We're good. Yep.
Any?
Any additional discussion?
What we will do too is we will bring back reports on this to you. Although you're not having to take action, we will bring back reports. We will begin to look at what we believe is fair and what we think we can do. But do not, I would honestly say, we'll probably report back to you where we are before we fully vet out any further, probably in November for you to look at. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the discussion and action of setting a date for our board retreat.
So there's multiple options of how boards are handling these now. I know you're all very busy people with real other jobs, and retreats are difficult. You do have a couple of options, and this is you can choose a day, you can choose an afternoon, you can choose an evening. Boards are often off campus. They often will even say, okay, we're going to go to a off-site location. You have the right to spend an evening in, like we could get a facility, Madam Chairman, where there's a hotel one evening and we work through the evening, and then the next morning, and then people be able to not miss a weekend and not take as much off from work. We're just wanting to start that conversation. If you have certain dates, we'd love to get this accomplished if we could in the fall. It follows through with some of the things you pointed out in the evaluation of you all wanting to get some further professional development. This is the start of that conversation. If you and I leave it to you as far as what times or dates you want to do, or what kind of format.
This is going to come. A weekend on a Saturday?
I'm just throwing it out there. Let's see.
Okay.
That would be my,
Saturday's
if we
fine
picked
with
a
me
Saturday,
too.
that'd be my preference. We could start at 8 o'clock, run it till 4. Boom, everybody goes home on Saturday evening to go do whatever they want. And it also, if you work 8 to 5, 5 days a week, or sometimes Saturdays, that doesn't take a full day of work away.
I see some nods over here. I know that probably works better for Erica too. So, okay, with that being said, Sandy, sorry, can you please get your dates that you would be available, the Saturdays, brother, between now and, well,
I
it'll
would
take us a little.
avoid August.
Void August.
Yeah, and think September through November, and
Yeah.
it would be fine.
So give Sandy the dates that you are available on Saturday, September through November. Either text or email something, some notice to Sandy, okay? Yes, your wife can send it.
You know, it's gonna make that go. Are we talking 4 hours, 8 hours?
We'll work with, I'll work with Chair Metzler on what kind of agenda the board wants. I don't think you'll be much more than, I think you would normally do an 8 to 3.
Yeah.
Because after that, you get a little bit deer in the headlights with all the things we could possibly do. It gets a little tiring toward an 8-hour day of it. So, normally we do an 8 to 3 with a lunch in the middle just to do that, so.
Okay, all right, so that gives us some direction, and we'll get started on planning that, and please get those dates to Sandy as soon as you can. All right, the next item is consideration of personnel. Do we have, there, Kate, thank you.
Good evening. We have a couple of faculty actions we need you to consider. We have a resignation from Mame Dakwa. She is a faculty chair member in our Allied Health program. And then we have some new faculty we'd like to welcome aboard, Shannon Kruger and Jocelyn Pena Hawkins, please.
Okay. All right, so we would need a, do we need a motion?
Yes,
for that?
ma'am.
We need a motion for that, please.
Move we accept both new employees.
So we have a motion for the resignation of one and employment of the other.
Accept the resignation.
Okay, thanks for your amendment. Okay, motion by Mr. Hand. Do we have a second? Who did that?
Both of them.
Dylan did. Okay. All right, additional discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, so now we have our executive session, and we will need to have a quick one of those. I hope it's quick. At this point, I'll have to ask everyone to exit the room after I read this, except for the cabinet and the police chief, please. The board will now recess their regular meeting, go directly into executive session as provided for the following Texas Government Code. Section 551076, deliberations regarding security devices or security audits. So, thank you. We will try to keep it short if you want to stay.
But we won't blame you if you leave.
That's right.